Cool. We are live. All right. So, had a great question from one of the Patreon members, Victor. Victor, what is up? So Victor and I were talking and chatting. He mentioned this question. Hold on a sec. I'll get it pulled up. All right. So Victor just asked, do you have any tips on how to speak with a seller when calling them or the first initial contact? How to get a hold of them, best ways to reach them. Once you do reach them, how to start off that conversation and lead it to a successful, hopefully successful deal. And then I feel like there was another part, but we'll start on this. All right. So, contacting sellers, I want to go over two sources because depending on the source of the deal, it's going to determine how you have that conversation. Now, obviously, we generate deals from a lot of different places. One of my biggest sources is referrals. I'm not going to talk about referrals because I've built up my referral sources and relationships and all of that over the course of 20 years. And I know y'all don't want to wait 20 years to start getting some deal flow. So I want to talk about the two sources that generate deal flow the quickest for us. So it's a very high turnaround. And secondly, I want to talk about just that other part of Victor's question. How do you approach them? Because a lot of people do it incorrectly. So let's talk about the first source. The first source is a pretty obvious one, I think, and it's LinkedIn. But I think that a lot of people don't do LinkedIn correctly. I'm a very big fan of Sales Navigator just because it allows you to find the right leads that are right for you, track those, keep them in a database. It's really easy to go back. And the reason that's important for both of these is that typically, one of the mistakes that people make is expecting that person that even if they're interested in selling, expecting them to move very quickly. Typically, it's a very long sales cycle. It's basically, we call it kind of sales cycle because it is going to take a long time in general. Every once in a while, it's very rare, but every once in a while, you contact that lead, you're talking to them. Not only do they want to sell, because that's the first obstacle, most people aren't even thinking about selling. And I'm going to talk about how you get around that in a sec. But most people aren't even interested in selling. Secondly, if they are, they're not really trying to do it now. It's like, hey, contact me in 6 months. Uh, you know, just even for that's the same even for good merger. And when we're working with sellers, one of the brokers today was just messaging me like, hey, this guy wants to talk to us. Da, da, da. I'm like, well, great, let's get him. let's get him listed. But he was like, hey, I do want to talk now, but I don't want to really sell my business for 2 years, and that's totally fine too. But it's our job to kind of keep that sales cycle going. It's just like a large company. When Oracle sells makes a sale of their software to a company, that sales cycle in that B2B environment could be 2 years. Even closer to home would be Goldman Sachs. When Goldman Sachs is taking a company public, you're talking about a sales cycle that's many, many years. So all of that taken into consideration, you want to fill your pipeline as much as possible so that you do get this kind of consistency. If you're looking to build a portfolio, now I know there are a lot of you on the channel that subscribe, and you're not really interested. You're just trying to go and find that single deal. That's totally fine. But if you're looking to build a portfolio, you want to build your pipeline as much as possible. And if you're looking to just find that single deal, you want to have a sniper approach. So, how do you use LinkedIn and how do you use it depending on what your goal is? Number one, if you are looking for a specific business, I love Sales Navigator because you can target the exact industry that you want to go after, obviously in the geographic areas that you want to go after, and start to build relationships and nurture those leads over a long period of time. If you're somebody that's looking for a specific deal, I do recommend that you get clarity. I think one of the things, if you know you're just going to buy a single business, it's better to do the research on the front end of the industry that you want to go into, and spend the time getting deep, getting the expertise, getting referrals, and that kind of thing. So once you target your industry and you start to make contact with them, the first thing is you are letting them know that you don't expect to buy their business immediately. So one of the things that I like to do is I don't even ask them about selling their business. I just tell them, hey, I love your business. I'm looking to get into the space. I was curious if you've thought about your exit strategy. Something like that would be literally the exact words that I would use when I'm making contact. After that, I'm starting a conversation. So, like I said, when people are doing the wrong approach, most of the time they're going in trying to pitch that person exiting their business. And that's just not the goal. The thing that we know that makes this whole thing super exciting is that every business only has three options. Either they're going to sell the business, they're going to pass the business down to their kids, or the business is going to go out of business. They're going to pass the business on to somebody, or the business is going to go out of business. So you only have those three options. So that's a great, one third of the businesses, that you got this kind of one third possibility that eventually they do sell. So we don't want to push them or annoy them. We just want to build a relationship with them. So if you're going and you're targeting that, what's up? We got Victor on right now. If you're targeting, and feel free to ask any follow-ups, Victor. But if you're targeting a specific industry, it gets easier to generate a bunch of deal flow because you can get referrals as well. So you're approaching them, you're asking about an exit strategy, you're not asking about them selling their business. You just, hey, eventually when you do so, have you thought about that? And obviously that triggers them to start thinking about their exit. But for the other benefits, you get deep into that industry. So within that strategy, I would join some of the LinkedIn groups for that industry. I would start to ask people, as you get into the conversation, okay, well, great. One of the things that you'll find surprising is when somebody wants to get into your industry and you're telling that person, hey, it's not your business. I just want to buy a business in this space. They're excited. They obviously are in the business. If they don't want to sell, they probably like what they're doing. And the fact that you want to also join, they want to help you. And so whether they know somebody else that might be interested in selling now, or they will just start telling other people, hey, if you want to sell your business, I got this person. And so when I talk about referrals, it is valuable to start building that. And it is a little bit easier if you're focused on a specific target. Now, let's talk about on the other side for LinkedIn. If you're going after a portfolio, for most people that are going after portfolio, you don't really care about the industry. It's more about finding a deal, getting a really great ROI on the business. Like literally, we do all kinds of business, from business in the finance space to animation to e-commerce to affiliate to offline. Right now we're focused on offline, but we've done a ton of online. It's just literally everything, and we're just filtering for ROI and cash flow, and it's more of a financial thing. So when it comes to that, on Sales Navigator, you can target based on that as well. So you can literally just start to target, this is the size of business that I want to go after. Because you're not looking for startups. It's really important, but you don't care about the industry as much. And you can still put some parameters around that. But the goal, instead of that sniper approach for the people that are looking to basically replace cash flow and buy a single business, instead of that, it is very much a shotgun approach. It's, hey, let's stuff the deal flow into the pipeline. So that's a lot of what we're doing, even with Good Mergers. So we're working with the brokers that are in Good Merger. Like, obviously, we are agnostic. Our goal is really trying to find deals that our clients, our buyer clients, are looking for, and it's a wide array. So we're trying to get as much deal flow as possible. And so when it comes to that, your targeting is going to be a little bit different. My second source of deals that is the kind of the quick turnaround is Facebook groups. So here, there's a couple of routes that you can go. One is the industry approach that we talked about with LinkedIn. But another approach that I'm a really big fan of that doesn't allow you to go after a specific industry, but you can go after a specific business model. So if you go after let's say you want to buy a business like e-commerce, or you want to buy a SaaS business. You don't care if the e-commerce business is clothing or selling electronics. You just want that business model. The neat thing in going after a business model instead of an industry is you can target courses and target even the free Facebook groups that are helping people start those businesses. And what you find in those groups are obviously entrepreneurs, and most entrepreneurs fall in love with starting something. So you have people that are in these groups and they love starting a business. And even going back to my very first deal, I've just seen plenty of these deals where somebody gets a business up to a certain point, it's profitable, and they get shiny object syndrome. We all know that shiny object syndrome is a real thing, and we've all been a victim to it at some point. The great thing for us, and the reason I love this strategy, is you're using shiny object syndrome to your benefit instead of it being your detriment when you fall for it. So with a lot of these entrepreneurs, they get in the course, they build something, maybe it makes some money, whatever, but then they're like, oh, well, this other thing is it's going to be so much cooler, and it's going to be so much bigger, and blah, blah, blah. And they want to move on to the other thing. So what I love to do in that group is just let people know. You can kind of go two routes. You can publicly, depending, sometimes the moderators don't want you to publicly announce anything, but if you're open to it, even if you go in and they're not a fan of just publicly announcing, if you start to interact and you're answering questions and you're in the comments and you become somebody who's a valued member, and then you mention, I'm looking to buy a business in this space. Most of the time, they don't really look at it as advertising because you're trying to buy something. You're not trying to sell something. Obviously, if you went on there and you're like trying to sell your course, they would have an issue with it. But I've rarely seen them have an issue with you saying, hey, and instead of me trying to start one of these, I'd love to buy an existing one. If you have one, send me a message. Now, if they do have a problem with, or you don't feel comfortable putting that promotion up, you can kind of see based on the comments who's doing well, who's not doing well. And again, just soft pitch. It's not, oh, I want to buy your business, but you can reach out and just DM the person directly. Say, hey, I noticed your business is doing well. Just want to let you know, if you ever feel like exiting, then I'd love for you to reach out. So that's something where you're putting out these fillers. It's not about trying to find one business and trying to convince that seller to sell it to you. It's about putting a bunch of fillers out and having them come back to you. This is also crucial, that you never get into a position where you're convincing the seller to sell, because now you're basically in a weak negotiating position, because they're like, hey, I don't even want to sell. You got to bring me some amazing offer and I'll consider it. But by putting out these fillers and then they forcing it so that you're never pitching them on selling, you're kind of just saying, hey, if you're ever interested, reach out, and they come back to you. Now you're in a stronger negotiating position because they've come to you. You didn't come trying to crawl to them and beg them to sell. So with those, you go after the general business model instead of the industry. You can contact them directly. You can put posts in those groups and do that across several groups. Now, the great thing, on the portfolio side, if you're one of the people that are looking to build a portfolio, you can do that across all business models. You can do that in some of the SaaS groups where they're helping people build SaaS businesses. You can do that in the e-commerce. You can do that in FBA, although I'm not as big a fan of what's going on in the FBA world. And then at the end of this whole process, what you're working towards is, hopefully on the Facebook side, you eventually get a deal done, and then that becomes a story. So the ultimate, and I've had this happen where it turns out to be pretty cool, and I get on a podcast and that kind of thing. But I get a deal done with one of their clients, and it becomes a cool success story for them, where they can share with their audience, like, oh, such and such just sold their business. And all you want them to do is mention, like, hey, it was, Victor that bought it. And now you become the de facto buyer for that marketplace. And regardless, you want, even if you don't necessarily have to make it a part of the deal, but I would just be very adamant to the person that I buy the business from that, hey, we don't have to go out public and talk about this, but I would really love if you had a good experience with me buying your business. And this is I'm really giving out some of the secrets. So this really will generate the most deal flow because it just goes on in perpetuity. But if they come in and they say they had this great experience with you as a buyer, because the biggest concern that everybody has is, oh, this person is going to screw me over and I'm not going to get the money, or I'm not going to be happy once I sell my business. So once they exit and they're happy, this does a couple things. Obviously, everybody who's in that group, you're going to be the trusted buyer. Everybody else, they don't know who these other people are. Are they real? Are they going to scam me? Are they going to take my business? If I tell them my niche, are they going to just go and copy the business? Which does happen. So you become the trusted buyer. But most importantly, it's a signal to the owners of the group. So when they have people in the future that come, they have a choice. They can say, hey, we could go and try somebody who we don't have any experience with, if they're going to be a good buyer to our client or not. Or when that client who's built a business comes in and is like, hey, I'm thinking about selling my business. It's like, oh, well, we know Victor, he worked with, Susan when she built her business. He bought it. She put up a whole post about how happy she was. Guess what? You're going to get that lead. It's a very, very powerful strategy. And yeah, it's the first time that I've talked about that publicly. So hopefully that is valuable for y'all and y'all will actually go put it to work. We'll go through a few comments. Hopefully everybody had an amazing Memorial Day. I think I'm about to finally going to see the Strange movie. I don't know if anybody has seen that, but I'm excited to check it out. All right, we had Denise, champion in PEFI 5. They have done an amazing job. Thank you for popping in, Denise. We got Victor, of course. Thank you for being a Patreon, and thank you for the great question. Got a few secrets out of me that I haven't shared publicly before. Chapman Walsh pops in, says only have 3 options: sell, pass it down, or shut it down. Exactly, Chapman. Thanks for coming in. Victor says, thank you so much, Ace. I thank you, man. Feel free to follow up with any questions, and we'll chat in the Patreon. Pirate School, yes. Always dropping the gems. Ace, happy holidays. Happy holidays to everyone. Have a great evening. Let's make this week count.